you at some point had to separate from the FDNY, a job that you loved, a job that you probably gave you a lot of purpose. And how long did you do?
How long?
How long were you on the FDNY?
A little over 10 years.
A little over 10 years, and you have to separate.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a little window into your separation?
Yeah. So I got terminated over policies that are still being...
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
For my career?
Yeah.
When I was in the break for school?
Yeah. Well, when did it come in?
After I got my EMT certification, in the school that I got in, Suffolk Community College, they had, I think like orientation where somebody from FDNY came in. So the application was there and I'm like, oh, why wouldn't I want to work for FDNY? It's like so much
job
more.
In the world.
Yeah. So, I put in the application. It's such a long process. And I don't think I heard from them for about 3 years. And it was interesting at the time because my friend who went through the course with me also applied for FDNY, and he applied like the last possible hour that you can. And he got called and he got into the academy before me. And I'm like, why didn't I get in with you? Like I had college credits. He didn't have college credits. I'm like, what the heck? So I was behind him and I thought I would never get in. And I kept calling when he told me the next class was going in. I kept calling the recruiter. I'm like, I'm ready. If you're putting a class in, I'm ready, because I didn't hear from them. And then the day before the class, I'm like, I called again. I left a message and I'm like, well, I guess I didn't get in. And then I got a message and I think somebody dropped out last minute. And I guess they were just like, this girl keeps calling. Just let her go in.
We're tired of hearing from her.
Yeah. So I think that's how I got into
persistence
the
pays off.
Yeah.
And then when you were in the academy, now you're in a very serious job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you apply for it, even as a police officer, it's pretty much the same thing. When you apply for it, the reality of the job doesn't hit you.
Nope.
No.
When did the reality hit you? Were you in the academy or when you got out?
I would say, honestly, not until I earned my paramedic patch, which was about 3 months after I was in the field as an EMT. I was also very young. I think I was 23 when I got in. Yeah, something like 22, 23. And being on the street as an EMT, I was only on the street for like 3 months or 6 months before I got to go into the paramedic class. And it wasn't after I became a paramedic that you just see your responsibility as a paramedic.
Yeah, you literally hold life and death in your hands.
100%.
And if you don't take that responsibility seriously, well, number one, you're not going to have a job for very long, but and maybe end up in jail. But it's more than that.
Yeah, like if something's going wrong, you don't have anybody to call.
Yeah, you're the person they call.
Yeah.
Well, that's
as an EMT. So EMT, if they can't figure it out, if things start going south, they call the paramedics. But as a paramedic, you're it.
Well, that's how I always say, like when you're a cop and you go on a medical call, as soon as the EMTs get there, you're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Now you're an EMT.
Yeah.
You're on a medical call. When the paramedics get there, it's like, oh, thank God.
When you're doing
the baton.
when you're doing CPR on a person and it's July and the sweat's dripping off you and the EMT show up, I'm like, all right, hire medical authority. See you later. Even though I was an EMT at the time, I'm like, well, you guys are it. I'm sorry.
Tag, you're it.
My back hurts or something.
Yeah.
It's an enormous amount of responsibility to take on, especially at 23. Because if I look back when I was 23, I don't think I was ready to take on that responsibility.
Yeah.
But you didn't go out. So FDNY has the medical services and it has the people who go out and are crazy and run into burning buildings. Mm-hmm. Did you ever sit on a fire truck or did you just go right into the other? I don't know how it works. This is ignorance.
No, it's not. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't even know the difference between EMTs and paramedics, or sometimes they call us ambulance drivers. So you're not ignorant when it comes to that. It's two separate unions, and you have to take the test for to be a firefighter. So I used to joke, but it's probably not a good joke. I used to be like, I'm really good at making fires, but not like putting them out, I have so much respect for firefighters. You have to really love your job. Like you becoming a firefighter, you putting yourself at risk, you're putting your fellow firefighters at risk, and then the person that you're going in to save is still at grave risk unless you know what you're doing. So I didn't have the passion for it. I love the camaraderie part of the firefighters. EMS doesn't really have that complete aspect yet, but firefighters do. But I knew my heart wasn't in it. So it would be better pay, way better pay, better camaraderie, but I didn't have the passion for it.
But there's a reason. Firefighters are in life and death situations where although you can be exposed to a life and death situation, they're much more rare. Those constant incidents of life and death, they bond people because people become brothers and sisters in foxholes.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, it's a camaraderie.
Yeah.
It's a camaraderie aspect of it. Same thing in law enforcement. You're in a life or death situation. You need to trust your partner.
Yeah.
That's why so many soldiers are so close to one another.
Right.
But now, I'm sure it wasn't all death and horror. I'm sure you had some fun too, because if I already know the answer to this question, but I'm sure you said some stuff that you're glad nobody heard.
Oh, yeah. And I saw some stuff, people wouldn't believe you when they say you could write a book on the things that you've
How many
seen.
people slipped and fell and accidentally fell on a Coke bottle?
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. Accidentally.
Or
1 in a million shot, Doc.
Or the, the fire pokers?
Really?
Yeah.
Who the hell would say this is a good thing to stick up my ass?
I mean, the thing is maybe he thought it was a good thing to stick up, but you don't realize there's the other
the hook on it.
Didn't they ever go fishing? That's how you catch a fish with a
Guess
barb.
not. He's from the city. They don't really fish.
They don't fish.
Yeah. But no, he slipped and fell.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
Of course he did. It's a. I can't even tell that one on the air. I can't. I can't do it. I can't do it. So you go through. What do you think your most serious call was?
I mean, kids are always serious. And it's kind of hard to stay calm, but for some reason, being in the field for so many years, you kind of gain that practice. But it's hard to leave the job without taking that with you. So I think when it comes to that, there's always some lingering emotion and questions. If I could have done more, if I could have done better. So I would say that's what's the hardest for me. No, there's been a lot of difficult calls, and you kind of got to wrap your brain and puzzle piece a little bit.
The fire poker would be number one on my list.
Well, yeah, because you're not supposed to transfer somebody face down, right? So the biggest thing is
buns up, face down.
Well, you gotta. Sorry.
Yeah. Wow. And it's funny.
Here, have a seat over here.
Because normally I'm a little bit more chivalrous, and I wouldn't say these things, but you're a paramedic. I mean, you've heard it all, you've seen it all, and some of the humor. But that's the way you have to cope with it.
Yeah.
What was your? Now going back to the crafts thing, did you go home after work after a difficult call and knit a sweater or do whatever kind of craft you wanted to do?
You know what? No, and that probably would help de-stress a little bit.
I was going to say, you have to have some kind of decompression.
Yeah.
I
mean, I
method
worked
of
the
decompression.
graveyard shifts too. So, going home with the sun up probably would have been better to do some of that before I would just jump right into sleep. But no, I didn't. I would just kind of keep that to my days off. But that would have been a good stress reliever.
Did you notice any personality changes because you were holding it in?
Yeah, I think you get a little bit more on edge, and not to lash out on somebody, but you're holding on to something. And they kind of grew a little bit from this, but sometimes it's like if you talk about it, you're not strong enough. But I think they kind of evolved a little bit to not make you feel like that in the fire department. They do give you the opportunity and the resources to talk about these things, but I think it's a little bit of pride. It's like, nah,
I'm good.
Well,
Yeah.
we talk about it all the time, mental health issues in the first responder field. You're afraid to actually say that something affects you
Yeah.
because now you're going to be labeled.
Yeah.
Is it any easier for a woman to speak about an issue that she's having? Because I know for men it's really tough, but I obviously, Mike, is it hard for women?
A little late on that one, but I got it.
Is it easier for women to speak about to woman or go to a professional?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're just more emotional beings, so it's just easier to.
I can verify that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's harder to speak to people that aren't in the medical fields or the first responder fields. So you just don't want to put, it's hard for them to take that kind of information in. But to go to other coworkers, you could talk about the call, but I think the men just kind of I'm good, and we don't need to talk about it.
Now, did you actually go to other female coworkers and talk to them about it, or
No.
you just didn't?
No, you just held it in.
Just held it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be rough.
Now,
Yeah.
did you love it?
I did.
Yeah, you did love it.
Yeah, every day is a new challenge, new puzzle.
But then there comes a time, and this is a tough topic here because this is something I really, really want to talk about. Unfortunately, we can't. You at some point had to separate from the FDNY, a job that you loved, a job that you probably gave you a lot of purpose. And how long did you do?
How long?
How long were you on the FDNY?
A little over 10 years.
A little over 10 years, and you have to separate. Do you
Yeah.
want to give us a little window into your separation?
Yeah. So I got terminated over policies that are still being
Litigated.
Yes.
What's your time frame
This was around 2000, when the lawsuit or when I was terminated.
when you were terminated?
Finally terminated in 2021.
So 2021, our audience is full of smart people, so I'm going to let you infer to that one, and we won't go any further with that
Yeah.
because obviously if it's current litigation, hopefully I think it's going to play itself out.
Yeah.
I really, really do. And I'm pulling for you because it was a travesty.
Yeah.
It really was. It hurt my heart to hear all that stuff going on.
Yeah.
But you're here.
Yep.
You made it through. You stuck to your values, which is a very, very rare thing in this world.
Yeah.
You have some core values that you held on to. How hard was it to hold on to those values?
I don't even know if I could describe it. I mean,
You probably went back and forth.
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was going to say.
The
Like
seesaw
mentally,
battle.
emotionally, I call my cousin every day. Should I just do this? Should I not? And I'm not even joking. I could show you a call log. Every day I called her and I'm like, let me just do this. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to feel forced into anything. And so, yeah, every single day up until the day that I got terminated was a struggle. And again, like just to go back, 5 minutes ago, it was a job that I like begged for, right? Just kept calling, like, I'll take the next class. If somebody calls out, I'll go,
But that speaks to how strong your resistance was to this particular policy.
Yeah.
And then so you're separated and you're left out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But the reason why we're here, because while you're separated, you have something hit you over the head like a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody what that was?
And it wasn't a fire poker, was it?
Yeah. No, thank goodness. A little PTSD with that one, right? I was actually diagnosed with Hodgkins lymphoma. So it's so weird to go into how I even like figured it out, So just a series of events. So let's go back a little bit further. So
And you don't have health insurance at that point.
No health
So that
insurance.
just adds another wrinkle on top of already difficult situations.
More drama in your life that you don't need.
Yeah. So I while I'm working the streets during a very difficult time, I lost my grandmother. And 5 months later, I lost my cousin to suicide. A year after that, I lost my uncle, who I'm very, very close with. A month after that, I lost my job. A month after that, I lost my best friend. So I just had this,
Downward slide.
yeah.
Like a what's next?
Yeah.
What's next attitude?
Yes, and in that time, like this was before I even had the diagnosis. So it's like, what do I process first,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't have time to process that because I just lost my career. So it's like, I can't pay rent, I can't pay my car, like I can't pay my light bill. Every day I'm like, and before I was terminated, I was placed on leave without pay, and they told you can't work.
Yeah.
You can't even work during that. So it went about 4 months before I was actually terminated that I wasn't allowed to work. So no income, no loggable income.
Boy, they really tried to force you.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I'm behind on almost all my bills. Every time I could like babysit or bake a cake for somebody, I would put a little money here, a little money there to just not get my car repossessed, not get kicked out. Like I didn't need another obstacle. So like all those emotional traumas like kind of got pushed on the back burner, because just I was in survival mode,
Right. You're still living in the city at this time?
Mm-hmm.
No job, living in the city.
Yeah.
Holy cow. at rent of $10,000 a month, whatever the heck the rent is.
Did you park in a garage too, or in the streets? Because those garages are,
Thank God I was in the streets.
they're awfully expensive too.
Yeah. But still, right, my rent was expensive. My car was expensive, which was a lease at the time. And then because I was so late on leases, they wouldn't renew my lease. So I had to finance. But because I was so late on leases, my car went up an extra like $260. I'm like, well, I couldn't even pay it at this rate. Now you're going to give me this rate.
When was the first signs that something internally wasn't right?
I got sick around 2020, obviously, the way everybody else got sick. And after that, I had so much issues. I kept getting these sinus infections that would just last like 3 months. And finally, when it would try and drain from my system, I would wake up and both my eyes would be caked shut. And I was like, do I have like double pink eye? Like I couldn't even open them, you know? So I'm like, what's going on? So
And being a medical professional, it's probably working against you at this point because you kind of know what's happening.
Trying to self-diagnose.
yeah. So, and then you don't really go to the doctor because you just kind of like treat yourself. But I'm like, there's something, and I said this from the beginning, there's something wrong with my lymphatic system, right? And why I said that just out of the blue, it's not like I have diagnostic testing or anything. I'm like, my lymphatic system's not working. It's not draining properly. I keep having these, I've never had sinus infections before, and they keep coming and they're lasting a little bit longer. So I kept having those issues. I still can't smell to this day. So I have a lot of medical issues post that. So fast forward a little bit, I get some kind of virus and my whole neck swells up. And when that finally goes down, I still see like a bulge on the right side. I'm like, well, that's not good, but I don't have any medical insurance, right? I can't go to the doctor. Then a couple months later, I feel another nodule. And I'm like, that's not good. And just to tap in a little bit to my spiritual side, I get a lot of messages from spiritual people, from loved ones that passed. Mainly in my dream. I don't see anybody walking around here, you know.
Yeah, just let me know if there's anybody behind us.
Yeah, no, not like that for me. So I had 2 dreams. And the first dream, in the dream, I was talking to my cousin I'm very close with. And I'm like, hey, I have cancer. And she was like, who says it like that? And I'm like, that's okay. I have cancer. And then the second dream was my foster mother. If we could go back into that if you want later. And she had cancer. And she said, I only want you to treat me. And I'm like, but I don't know what I'm doing. She's like, I only want you to treat me holistically. And I was like, okay, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And I did in the dream, and I cured her of her cancer. And so when I felt that second nodule, I said in my head, I'm like, that's cancer. And so when I lost my second job,
That's a whole nother episode.
So when I lost my second job, I applied for Medicaid, and I went straight to the cancer and blood specialist. And I was like, this is going to sound crazy, but I have cancer. And he's like, all right, let's do the testing. And came back cancer in my lymphatic system.
So what was that gut shot like?
Kidding.
You know what? I think maybe because of the spirituality and kind of where I was, I wasn't shocked. It's kind of like I knew. You were just confirming what
you already know.
Yeah. And so I literally just sat there and I was like, okay, what's the next steps? And so he told me what he wanted to do with Western medicine, put a port, do chemo. And I was like, all right, well, we had to set up for the lymphaectomy to take it out to get a full diagnosis. And in that time, I started researching like all the people that did holistic care. And I started researching people's journeys that did Western medicine. And when I watched the journeys of people with Western medicine, I would just cry. And, you know, I'm like, cancer's not easy. You know, they feel sick, they look sick. They're just down in spirits. And then when I looked at the holistic journey, I'm like, these people get to keep their health and they're healing their cancer. And so like that opened the door, and I started doing more and more research. And I found a really good clinic that I hope I can make it to do the treatment for that instead of, if I don't have to do chemo.
So radiation, and I'm throwing stuff off the top of my head because I don't know this for sure, but I believe radiation was invented somewhere or brought to prominence somewhere in the 1830s. And then chemo, I think, is the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken. So take chemo, for instance. 100 years we've had chemo. Almost 200 years we've had radiation. Yet we still have a cancer issue.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know there's obvious advances in radiation and chemo, but it doesn't seem to. I have my own theories that it doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah.
It just seems to be prolonging.